freezing night, a giant ship, and then just one iceberg changed history forever. More than 2,200 people were on board, unaware that many would never see another sunrise. It was called Unsinkable, yet less than 3 hours after striking an iceberg, it disappeared beneath the ocean. Was it simply bad luck, or did a series of small mistakes create one of history's greatest disasters? Let's uncover the true story behind the world's most famous ship, the Titanic.
QuestAns presents, What Really Happened to the Titanic?
At the beginning of the 20th century, countries competed to build bigger, faster, and more luxurious ocean liners. The competition wasn't only about speed, it was also about prestige. A Britain-based company called White Star Line wanted to build the most luxurious ships the world had ever seen. Their answer was a trio of giant ships, Olympic, Titanic, and Britannic. Titanic was the second ship of the three and the largest moving object ever built at that time. She measured nearly 269 meters long, almost the length of 3 football fields. Inside, there were grand staircases, luxurious dining halls, elegant cabins, and even a swimming pool. For wealthy passengers, it was more like a floating 5-star hotel than a ship. New safety features in its design and build made many people believe Titanic could never sink. That confidence would soon become one of the greatest misconceptions in maritime history. April 10, 1912, the greatest ship in the world was finally ready to begin her maiden voyage. Thousands of people crowded the docks to witness the departure of the magnificent Titanic. At over 46,000 tons, Titanic looked less like a ship and more like a floating city. Around 2,200 passengers and crew members boarded the giant ocean liner to cross the Atlantic to New York. The passengers on Titanic came from many different countries and very different walks of life. Some were among the richest people on Earth, traveling in extraordinary luxury. Others were immigrants, carrying dreams of beginning a new life in America. More than 100 children were also on board the ship. For first-class passengers, life on Titanic was extraordinarily comfortable. Guests enjoyed fine dining, libraries, exercise rooms, and even a swimming pool. Second-class passenger facilities were also considered very good for their times. Even third-class passengers found the ship cleaner and more comfortable than many other ocean liners. Behind the luxury, hundreds of crew members worked tirelessly to keep Titanic running. Deep below the decks, engineers and firemen shoveled tons of coal into enormous furnaces. As Titanic sailed westward across the Atlantic, passengers relaxed and enjoyed the calm sea and pleasant weather. But far ahead, enormous floating ice fields lay hidden in the wake, and the first warnings had already begun arriving. April 14, 1912. Titanic had been at sea for 4 days. The night seemed calm and peaceful. Throughout the day, other ships had been sending messages about dangerous ice ahead. Several reports warned that huge icebergs and floating ice lay directly along Titanic's route. The warnings reached Titanic's wireless room, but passenger messages also kept the operators extremely busy. Some warnings were delivered to officers. Others never received immediate attention. That evening, the air grew colder and colder as Titanic entered iceberg territory. The sea became unusually calm, so calm that there were almost no waves. Ironically, the calm sea made icebergs harder to see because there were no waves breaking against them. High above the decks, 2 lookouts stood in the crow's nest, scanning the darkness. They had no radar, no night vision equipment, only their eyes. Adding to the challenge, the lookouts did not even have binoculars that night. Then, at about 11:40 p.m., something suddenly appeared in the darkness ahead. The lookout rang the warning bell 3 times. Then he telephoned the bridge and shouted the words that would become famous forever. "Iceberg, right ahead." The officers immediately ordered to reverse and turn, but the enormous Titanic had very little time and distance. The order to turn came immediately, but a ship this large could not change direction instantly. Titanic began turning, and for a moment it seemed she might miss the iceberg. Then the starboard side scraped against the ice. Passengers felt a strange shudder and a long scraping vibration beneath their feet. Most passengers barely noticed anything unusual. Some even joked that the ship had simply brushed against a little ice. On deck, pieces of ice had fallen aboard, giving only a small hint of the disaster below. The real damage was hidden beneath the waterline, where the iceberg had torn open several compartments. Seawater poured into the forward compartments faster than the pumps could remove it. As the bow sank lower, water began flowing over the tops of the compartment walls. Titanic's shipbuilder, Thomas Andrews, quickly inspected the damage with senior officers. After calculating the flooding, Andrews reached a devastating conclusion. Titanic would sink. The estimate was shocking. Perhaps 2 hours, maybe a little more. Captain Edward Smith ordered the crew to prepare the lifeboats and send distress messages. For most passengers, the night still seemed calm. They were yet to realize that the world's most famous ship was sinking. Time was running out. Every passing minute was bringing icy seawater higher into the ship. Inside the wireless room, operators Jack Phillips and Harold Bride sent urgent distress messages across the Atlantic. Their signals reached several nearby ships, but help was still many miles away. Crew members uncovered the lifeboats and began preparing them in the freezing night air. At first, many passengers didn't believe the ship was in serious danger. Some even hesitated to leave the warmth and comfort of the ship for small open lifeboats. Meanwhile, icy seawater continued filling more compartments below deck. Many of the first lifeboats were lowered, carrying far fewer people than they could safely hold. The bow sank deeper, lifting the stern slightly higher above the ocean. Electric lights still glowed brightly, so it was hard for many passengers to believe that the situation was critical. As the ship tilted further, loading the remaining lifeboats became increasingly difficult. More and more people now realized there would not be enough lifeboats for everyone. The wireless operators continued sending distress calls until the very last moments possible. By around 2 a.m., the bow had disappeared beneath the icy Atlantic, and the stern rose high into the night sky. The tremendous stress caused the giant ship to break apart before the two sections slipped beneath the surface. 2:20 a.m., April 15, 1912. Titanic, the greatest ship of that time, disappeared beneath the Atlantic Ocean. More than a century later, experts continue to study how and why Titanic sank. Today, we know far more about the disaster. The iceberg did not tear one enormous hole in the ship, as many people imagine. Instead, the collision damaged several sections of the hull, allowing seawater to flood multiple compartments. Titanic's watertight compartments were an advanced safety feature, but they had one important limitation. The compartment walls did not extend high enough. As the bow sank, water simply spilled into the next compartment. Titanic's steel and rivets followed that era's gold standard, but were less resilient than modern shipbuilding technology. Titanic was also traveling close to full speed, despite entering an area where ice had been reported. The sea was unusually calm, and the night was moonless, making icebergs much harder to spot. Several iceberg warnings had been received that day, but not all were given the same urgency. Together, all these small factors combined into one tragic chain of events. Was Titanic truly unsinkable? The shipping company never made such extravagant claim. The idea grew through newspaper reports and public confidence in the ship's then advanced remarkable design. No single mistake sank Titanic. It was a combination of nature, engineering limitations, and human decisions. Together, these factors created one of history's most studied maritime disasters. But from this tragedy came important lessons that would make future sea travel far safer. Hours after the sinking, the rescue ship RMS Carpathia arrived and began taking survivors aboard. With around 700 survivors and more than 1,500 victims, it was one of history's deadliest peacetime maritime disasters. News of the disaster spread rapidly across the world, leaving millions stunned. Investigations in Britain and the United States carefully examined what had gone wrong. Although the Titanic was gone, its story was far from over. The tragedy would change the future of sea travel forever. The disaster led to major improvements in shipbuilding technology and maritime safety standards around the world. Ships were now required to carry enough lifeboats for everyone on board. Continuous radio watches became standard, ensuring distress calls could be heard at any hour. International agreements introduced stricter safety rules that continue to protect passengers today. For more than 70 years, Titanic's final resting place remained one of the ocean's greatest mysteries. In 1985, a research team finally discovered the wreck nearly 4 kilometers beneath the Atlantic. Today, the wreck continues to teach scientists about history, engineering, and the deep ocean. Titanic is remembered not only for its size, but for the lessons it left behind. It reminds us that even the greatest achievements must always be matched by careful planning and respect for nature.
Thanks for watching. Keep visiting for more QuestAns episodes.